Hello, it's Wednesday in Los Angeles, and this is Jerome. I have some news for you. I am transitioning my podcast title to be Jerome's Exceptionally Curious Podcast, which also includes my near death experience. But I realized that a lot of my life has been about curiosity. I've always been curious about how things work or why certain things work a certain way. But what makes us make decisions around connections, relationships, and around race, political ones? So, shifting the podcast to my exceptionally curious podcast allows us to work in a more expanded space. And yes, my near death experience to life is definitely still part of me very much, but I wanted to also expand it. This way, we're going to ask questions that might just change your perspective, or at the very least, change how you show up for a meeting with your family, or how you see the world. While it's okay to have relationships or communication with people that see the world differently. The other day, I was on the golf course with some friends, and I had a conversation with one of my buddies, George. And we were talking about how different the world is than the world we grew up in. The fact that now it seems very difficult to have a conversation with someone if they don't agree with you. On the other hand, I seek out people that are radically different than me. I actually have conflict with people that are radically different than me. And over my lifetime, those conflicts have been extremely rewarding. I've usually learned something. Some of those people that I've had conflict with become friends. So I relish and look forward to discussing and conversing with people that are different than I am. I grew up in Redfern Projects at a time when there was a mass transition from row houses to low income housing. This was in the 50s. And when those units became available, there was a mixture of Black, Jewish, Italian, Puerto Rican, and we're all living together in these buildings. And the smells and the food that we had, wow, was amazing. Dinner time was always around between 5 and 6. And you could smell different fragrances. You could smell different cultures. It became a melting pot. And that's what New York was at that time. But I was very curious about how these different smells related to those individuals. I remember having dinner one day over at Albert Falsetto's house. Albert's family was Italian. And I go to dinner, and we had an Italian dinner, meatballs and spaghetti. But let me tell you, they were like meatballs and spaghetti that I never had before, because up until that point, meatballs and spaghetti came out of the Chef Boyardee can at my house. So I go home and I tell my mom, we have not been eating Italian food. She goes, what do you mean? Nothing. I said, I was at Albert's house and we had actual real meatballs and spaghetti. Then I became very curious about food, different cultures and their food. My wife calls me a foodie. I can remember dates and times and places that I had a meal. I'm talking back 20, 30, 40 years. I can remember those meals, the location, and the people that were there. I can forget in a minute where my keys are, but I can remember where those meals are. So now look, I've already told you all the time that I died. We talked about that, the blackness, the MRI, the moment that it just turned to black. But today, I really want to talk about going forward. What happens when you stop trying to know everything? What happens when you allow yourself to be slightly curious? What does that provide you with? What do you begin to learn? Because curiosity didn't just bring me back, it's kept me sane. I went through a period of slight depression around it. I was angry, I was mad. I felt something was taken from me. And then it dawned on me, whoa, wait a minute, Jerome. Something's been given to you. And this is the time for you to be very curious about what you learned or what you're learning in that Blackness. So this podcast, a lot of things that I'm doing now is really about that curiosity of who is Jerome? What is my purpose? Why am I still here? What am I being asked to give? What am I being asked to do? Not only in my life, but for others. Who's waiting on me to bring something through? So that's what this journey is about for me right now. So grab whatever it is, your coffee, your tea, your water, your Coca-Cola. People don't drink soda. I do. But whatever it is that you drink, kombucha, and let's have a little bit of exploration into curiosity. I hope that I poke something gently in you that makes you want to explore your own curiosity. Be it at work, be it with your family, or just for you. What are you most curious about? Take a moment and reflect. Has curiosity been a part of your daily routine? When you wake up, are you curious about what your day's going to be, or are you pretty much in a routine? One thing that I found with curiosity is you want to be curious before you get critical. This is something that I'm working on, particularly around this period in time. I've spent a lot of time talking to people that think politically different than I do, talking to people that were fans of Trump. I interviewed 3 guys on the driving range before the election, and they told me all the reasons why Trump was going to be the best choice and save us all. And I've never seen a president, even Obama, that I liked as my savior. I'm more of a spiritual connection person, so I count on the spirit and my individuality to do that. But I'm very curious about why we choose why we choose sides. And I've tried to say in the middle of this, but sometimes I slip. I don't know if I slip. I just get angry about some things that I see or read. One of the things I've learned is if you can zoom out and take a helicopter ride about 30,000 feet up, you'll be able to see things from a different perspective and it gets you out of the weeds. And the more that you can helicopter up, that's when the curiosity kicks in. That's when you can step into your own sense of self, perspective, and get a greater understanding of what you're seeing or exploring. And it also allows you to be extremely present. When we're curious, you're in a discovery mode. And I work with a lot of clients, executives, leaders around this area. Many times, leaders get stuck on the whole concept of this is the way it should be. Right now, organizations are struggling. There's a lot of complexity, challenges, and rapid changes. I believe that curiosity, the more curious an organization can be, the greater chance they have of identifying their pain points, identifying the greatest challenges, and discovering where they need to pivot. Curiosity allows you to embrace rapid change at a slower pace. Many times you have to slow down to speed up. So what are 5 steps that you could take in your curiosity journey? So the 5 steps that you can take on your curiosity journey. Number 1, ask the better question. Instead of what's wrong with them, what's real with them? What makes them who they are? What makes them tick? Why do they see or act in that way? I've done this with the Trump folks, and I have relatives that are into Trump, and I have golf buddies that are into Trump. And I always ask the better question, like, why? Curiosity starts when judgment ends. Ask with love, not a gavel. And that's challenging, particularly during these times. Even I have tremendous challenges this time. And there's nothing that I like about our current president. But I have to ask a better question. Why was he voted in? Maybe racism? I don't know. But I do know asking the better question has value in business, life, and relationships. So let's look at asking a better question in your relationship. Asking a better question at work. The second one is allow yourself to be awkward a little longer. Silence is actually golden. It means that something very important is close by. And for you to see it or hear it, you have to give it room to breathe. It's like fine wine. I hear from friends that they want that wine to breathe. Don't rush to fill the space. Let the space fill you. That's where the breakthrough sneaks in. That's where the unexpected happens. That's when the aha occurs. That's when wisdom kicks in. Or that's when someone else supplies you with the direction that you hadn't even seen. When we get too busy with noise, there's a tendency to not hear or not feel or not see where we're being directed. So allow for the silence. Let the dumb question breathe. The one that you almost didn't ask, that usually changes the room. Fear says, don't ask dumb questions. Curiosity says, ask it and then listen. There's still something to be learned from it. I work with a lot of professionals who don't want to ask the dumb question. And I encourage them, let someone else tell you that it was a dumb question. Even if it was a dumb question, there's a part of that that wasn't dumb, or there's a part that you needed to go through. There's something that you had to get out of asking that question. And the chances are that over 3 months, and you ask 10 questions in the meeting, I would bet that 6 of them will at least not be dumb. Each time you ask a question, here's what will happen. You'll get better. Sometimes the questions you have to ask, it's not really the question. You want to say something, but you don't really know what it is to gain your identity, particularly if you are moving into a new leadership position. You're moving from a doer to a leader. The only way to get through this is practice. So I think about Steph Curry. He became a great shooter because guess what? He shoots, he practices, he prepares for this. And Steph is more than just a shooter. He's a complete basketball player. So ask the dumb question because that's part of your practice. And it probably was not that dumb. Invite a new mirror. Talk to someone who doesn't think like you. This goes back to my statement I made earlier about curiosity and reaching out with people that have a different perspective or a different viewpoint than you do. Bonus points if they make you laugh or roll your eyes. I have a golf buddy. He makes me laugh all the time. He's a conservative guy. I used to think he was a racist. I really did. And it took a awkward moment. We were on, when I realized that about 10 years ago, that he wasn't racist. He was just a curmudgeon. He was this older white guy who he's a contractor, built a lot of homes, and he was a curmudgeon. And Bruce had certain beliefs, and he's definitely conservative, but I would not call him a racist. I would call him racially unaware, not from a standpoint of wanting to hurt anyone. He just has a limited view of the world. And so his curiosity is low. Luckily, mine is very high. So I'm like, what makes this guy tick? Why am I interested in him? I enjoy playing golf with Bruce. And anytime he gets too far into political discussions, I just turn to him and I say, Bruce, stop it. And guess what? He does. Growth doesn't always come from reflection. I'm a coach that works with people a lot on reflection. But sometimes it comes from refraction. It comes from the thing that makes you the most awkward, or gives you the most angst, or gives you the most frustration, or even anger. That's where you start to grow. This is where I grow. And that growth is interesting. I used to run track in college and high school. And a lot of track is about refraction. As you feel that threshold of pain, as you're trying to get your times down, that's where the growth occurs. You can't go off on the track and go, let me reflect on what will happen if I push a little harder. No, you have to just step into it. So jump off into the deep end and see what happens. Number 5, end the day with a curious thought. What surprised me today? Let me think about that. One was I was on this call with this group called the Next Level Speakers. And part of what happens on this call is people step in and do a practice speech. I haven't done one yet. And it surprises me that I haven't done one yet. So I'm curious why. So I'm going to look into that. The other thing that surprised me today was how important visualization is. So today I had a golf lesson with my coach, Jimmy, who's I've had for 20 plus years. We were working on rhythm and timing. And what surprised me today is how connected my golf swing is. I become more curious about certain aspects of the swing. One of my golf buddies yesterday said my swing started to look like a slingshot, where it was really coming through and hitting the ball at a very high velocity pace. So I guess the thing that surprised me today on the golf was that my game is improving even though I'm older. I think I'm a better ball striker at this stage of my life than I was when I first started playing 32 years ago. So what surprised me? It's not what I achieved as much as the questions that I've asked. What surprised me today was the fact that I'm seeing a different approach to stepping into the rest of my life. So let me say this in really plain English. If you're still here, if you're still asking questions, still waking up curious about what else your life could be, you're already halfway there. That's the process. That's the daily piece. Like, how curious can you be on a consistent basis? That's the discipline. Consistency is part of the process, and having the discipline to be consistent It's something that I'm working on in the later stages of my life. I sometimes regret that I wasn't more disciplined or consistent in my younger days, but hey, it is what it is. We move on and we stay curious. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be polished. You just need to stay in the conversation, stay present, keep to yourself, be genuine, be transparent, allow yourself to be vulnerable. With people who matter, enjoy the time you have. That's the key. Time is limited. And while we love to think we're going to live forever, we're not. Over the past 5 months, I've lost 3 friends. And so I'm more curious about what's this journey like for me? What's next? But the key thing I learned a long time ago from one of my spiritual sensei, Henry Conyers, he said, enjoy the time you have. And that's become more relevant. And so I'm very curious about what does that look like for me? What does that look like with me and my wife? What does that look like for me and my work? What really matters? How intentional do I need to be? Or how intentional do I want to be? I'm very curious about intentionality. How does that allow me to grow? What am I being asked to do? So here's your charge. Ask what matters. Listen to yourself and to others as it's extremely important. Laugh loud and laugh hard and love more. And don't wait for death to get curious about life. Yes, I had my near-death experience, and I'm still curious about all the things that have come out of that. One thing that has come out of it for sure has been this podcast, this willingness to put myself out there, to honor what I'm learning, and to connect with people. So you don't have to have a near-death experience to get here. Death is an acronym to life, to change. When you face death, you face change. Right now in our country, we are facing the highest level of death I've experienced in my lifetime within our current leadership. I invite you to stay curious about yourself. Put down the news. Don't listen to the news. I've changed my whole dynamics with that. The first thing I used to do prior to November 5th was read the paper on my iPad. Now, I do not start out my day that way. I will glance later on in the day when I feel very present and very secure in myself. But allow yourself to stay curious about what's in front of you. What is going to assist you to drive home the things that are important to you? That's the playbook, it's a journey. It's what curiosity can allow you to be. Before you sign off, think about the person that could use a little spark, a little question, a little assistance. Send this to them, tag them. And if it hits you in the gut or the funny bone, drop a comment, DM me. What are you curious about today? What do you want to know? Curiosity is not a solo act. It is a partnership. It is a relationship with others. And again, the more people in your life that are radically different than you, the more opportunity you have to grow and learn. This is Jerome, your question asking, laughter loving, soul searching, reminding you stay alive, stay awake. And for all that's important, stay exceptionally curious. And remember where you had your greatest meals from, even if you can't remember where your keys are. Have a great day.